Aqui esta texto de storytelling primeira pessoa basado no titulo que você escolheu. While my family planned to sell my land behind my back, I walked into the meeting with the deed. I always believed family meant loyalty. That belief shattered the afternoon I discovered my relatives were secretly planning to sell the land my father left me. It started with a phone call from an old neighbor. "Hey, did you know your family is meeting with a real estate agent about your land?" I laughed at first. It sounded ridiculous. My land, the small piece of countryside my father had worked his entire life for, the place where he taught me how to fix fences and plant trees. But something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. So I drove straight to my aunt's house. Through the window, I could see them all sitting around the table, my brother, my cousin, my aunt, and a man in a suit with a folder full of documents. A real estate agent. My brother was speaking loudly, like he always did when he thought he had already won. "She doesn't even live here anymore," he said. "Selling it is the best option." My cousin nodded. "We'll split the money. It's only fair." Only fair. I stood outside the door for a moment, listening to them divide something that wasn't theirs. Then I walked in. The room fell silent. My aunt blinked in surprise. My cousin almost dropped his pen. My brother looked annoyed, like I had interrupted something important. "What are you doing here?" he asked. I didn't answer. Instead, I calmly walked to the table and placed a folded document in front of the real estate agent. The man adjusted his glasses and opened it. Seconds passed. Then he cleared his throat. "I'm sorry," he said slowly, looking around the room. "But according to this deed, the land belongs entirely to her." No one spoke. My brother's face went pale. My cousin leaned forward like he didn't believe what he had heard. "That can't be right," he said. The agent slid the document across the table. "It's signed, registered, and legally binding." I looked at all of them. The same people who had smiled at family dinners, who had hugged me at holidays, who apparently had no problem selling what my father had trusted me to keep. Then I said the only thing that felt right. "Next time you plan to sell something behind my back," I told them quietly, "make sure it actually belongs to you." No one said another word. And for the first time that day, the land felt exactly where it belonged. I stood there for a moment, waiting for someone to say something. But the room stayed silent. My brother finally pushed his chair back, the legs scraping loudly against the floor. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "Dad would never leave the whole land to you." I looked at him calmly. "He didn't," I said. "Not at first." That got everyone's attention. My aunt leaned forward. "What do you mean, not at first?" I tapped the document the real estate agent was still holding. "Dad changed the deed 2 years before he passed away." My cousin frowned. "Why would he do that?" For a moment I hesitated. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because saying it out loud felt heavier than I expected. Because he knew exactly what would happen after he was gone. No one spoke. I could almost see the memories running through their heads, the arguments about money, the constant complaints about the farm being a waste of land, the way they always talked about selling it. My father heard those conversations too. One evening, 2 years before he died, we were sitting on the porch watching the sunset over the fields. He handed me a small envelope. "I went to the lawyer today," he said. I remember laughing. "What for?" He looked out at the land, the same way he had done every evening for 30 years. "Because this place deserves someone who actually loves it." I didn't open the envelope until weeks later. Inside was the updated deed. Back in the dining room, my brother shook his head. "So that's it," he said bitterly. "You just keep everything?" I met his eyes. "You're welcome to visit," I said. That only made him angrier. My cousin stood up suddenly. "You can't seriously expect us to believe this," he snapped. "We're family." I nodded slowly. That's exactly why he did it. The real estate agent quietly began putting his papers back into his briefcase. The meeting was clearly over. As everyone started arguing with each other, I picked up the deed and folded it carefully. Then I walked to the door. Just before leaving, I turned back one last time. "My father didn't leave me the land because I deserved more than you," I said. The room went quiet again. "He left it to me because I was the only one who never tried to sell it." And with that, I stepped outside. The late afternoon sun stretched across the fields, lighting up the old fence my father and I had repaired together years ago. For the first time since he died, I felt something close to peace, because the land was still there, and so was the promise I made to him. I walked slowly toward the old fence at the edge of the property. The wind moved through the tall grass the same way it had when I was a kid. For a moment, it felt like my father might still walk out of the barn, wiping his hands on that old blue rag he always carried. But the house behind me suddenly erupted with shouting. I turned slightly. Through the open windows, I could hear my brother's voice. "You knew about this, didn't you?" he yelled at my aunt. "I didn't know he changed the deed," she snapped back. My cousin slammed something on the table. "This land is worth a fortune. She can't just keep it." I almost laughed at that. For years, none of them cared about the farm. They called it dead land. They said my father was stubborn for refusing to sell when developers started buying property nearby. But suddenly, it was valuable. Funny how that works. I leaned against the fence and looked across the fields. In the distance stood the old oak tree where my father used to park the tractor in the shade. That's when the front door burst open. My brother stormed outside. He walked straight toward me. "You think you won?" he said. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I watched the wind ripple through the crops. "This was never a competition," I said. "Oh, please," he scoffed. "You got everything." I shook my head. "No," I said quietly. "I got responsibility." He frowned. "What does that even mean?" I pointed toward the fields. "You see land that can be sold," I said. "Dad saw 30 years of work." He crossed his arms. "You're being dramatic." Maybe I was. But I remembered the early mornings before school when my father woke me up to help fix fences after a storm. I remembered the summer heat, the smell of soil, the quiet pride in his voice when the harvest was good. This place wasn't numbers on a contract. It was his life. And he trusted me to protect it. My brother shook his head again. "You'll regret this," he said. "Developers are already offering millions." That didn't surprise me. The real estate agent inside probably came with those same numbers. But I had already made my decision long before that meeting. "I'm not selling," I said. His eyes widened. "You're insane." "Maybe." He stared at me for a long moment, waiting for me to change my mind. When I didn't, he turned around and walked back toward the house, muttering under his breath. I stayed by the fence. The sun was beginning to dip lower, casting long shadows across the land. For the first time all day, everything was quiet again. I took the folded deed out of my pocket and looked at my father's signature. Then I folded it carefully and slipped it back. "Don't worry, Dad," I whispered to the empty field. I kept my promise. And this time, no one was going to take it away. I thought the story ended there. But I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I received a letter. Not an email. Not a phone call. A formal letter from a lawyer. My brother was contesting the deed. According to the document, he believed our father had been pressured into transferring the land to me. He claimed the change was unfair and demanded the property be divided among the family. I wasn't surprised. Greed rarely gives up quietly. Still, holding that letter in my hands made my chest tighten. I had hoped the meeting would end it. Instead, it had only started something bigger. A month later, we were sitting in a courtroom. My brother sat across from me, avoiding my eyes. My cousin was there too, whispering with their lawyer. The judge reviewed the documents, silently, for several minutes. Every second felt longer than the last. Finally, he looked up. "According to the records," he said, adjusting his glasses, "the deed transfer was legally executed, properly registered, and witnessed by 2 independent parties." My brother's lawyer shifted in his chair. The judge continued. "There is no evidence of coercion." Then he closed the folder. "The property belongs solely to her." Just like that. The case was over. Outside the courthouse, my brother stopped me on the steps. "You could still sell it," he said quietly. "We'd all benefit." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I shook my head. "You still don't understand," I said. He frowned. "That land isn't money to me." I turned and walked down the steps before he could answer. A few days later, I drove back to the farm. The place looked the same as it always had, the barn leaning slightly to the left, the old fence running along the road, the oak tree standing tall in the field. But something felt different. For the first time since my father died, the farm truly felt like mine to protect. I spent the afternoon repairing a broken section of fence, just like my father used to do. As the sun began to set, I sat on the porch steps and looked across the land. And I realized something my family never understood. They saw property. Developers saw profit. But my father saw something else entirely. He saw a legacy. And now, it was my turn to protect it. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The farm was quiet, wrapped in that soft gray light that comes just before sunrise. For years, this was my father's favorite time of day. He used to say the land breathes differently in the morning. I finally understood what he meant. I poured a cup of coffee and walked out onto the porch. The field stretched out in front of me, still covered with a thin layer of mist. The old barn creaked gently as the wind moved through the boards. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. Then I noticed a car slowly pulling up the dirt road. My first thought was that it was another developer. Ever since the court case ended, offers had started arriving almost every week. Some of them were absurdly high, numbers that would have changed my life overnight. But I had already said no. The car stopped near the gate. A man stepped out, maybe in his late 50s. He wasn't wearing a suit like the real estate agents usually did. Just jeans, boots, and a faded jacket. He looked around the land for a moment before walking toward the fence. I met him halfway. "Morning," he said. "Morning." He nodded toward the fields. "Beautiful place." "Thank you," I replied. He hesitated for a second, like he was choosing his words carefully. "My name's Daniel," he said. "I knew your father." That caught my attention. "You did?" He nodded. "Years ago. We worked together for a while fixing irrigation systems around the county." I studied his face, trying to see if I recognized him from old photos or memories. "I'm sorry," I said. "I was pretty young back then." He smiled slightly. "Yeah. You used to run around with a red baseball cap and scare the chickens." I laughed. Okay, maybe he did know my father. Daniel rested his arms on the fence and looked across the fields. "Your dad talked about this land all the time," he said. "He was proud of it." That didn't surprise me. "But he also worried about it," Daniel added. I frowned. "Worried?" Daniel nodded slowly. He knew people would try to take it after he was gone. I looked down at the dirt road, remembering the meeting at my aunt's house, the courtroom, the arguments. "Looks like he was right," I said. Daniel reached into his jacket pocket. I figured he might be. Then he pulled out a small envelope. "He asked me to give this to you someday," he said. My heart skipped. "When?" Daniel shrugged slightly. "About 3 years ago." I took the envelope carefully. My name was written on the front, in my father's handwriting. The same handwriting I had seen on the deed. For a moment, I just stared at it. "What is it?" I asked quietly. Daniel smiled. "I never opened it," he said. "But knowing your dad, I'm guessing it's something important." The morning wind rustled through the trees as I slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a folded letter. And another document. The moment I unfolded it, my eyes widened. Because, whatever I thought my father had left me before, this was something even bigger.